Welcome back, everyone, to the Filthy Rich with Story podcast. My name is Hannah, and I am so excited to be joined with an amazing guest, Chelsea Quint. She is known as the Business Whisperer, and Chelsea was an ex-corporate marketer who worked with brands like Pilot Pens and Party City, turned messaging and sales strategist who helps brilliant founders get their genius offers seen and sold. I am so excited for this conversation. Your response to the form actually stood out to me a lot. I loved your story about handling that messy client situation. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to get a lot from that conversation. So Chelsea, I'm so glad that you're here. I feel like our brains approach storytelling and business in such similar ways. We've got a lot of similarities in the story. So I feel like this conversation is long overdue. I'd love for you to just dive into your story. You know, you've been in the sales and marketing industry for almost a decade now, and I would love to hear what your transition from the corporate world to the online freelancing world, what that looks like and how it was for you.
Oh, it was filling out the form was so challenging because editing it down to a story was tough because there are so many stories of lessons learned and mistakes made and things that I look back on like, sweet baby Chelsea, what were you thinking? I've been at this for over a decade if we count the corporate times. I've been in business for myself for 9 years. And so I made this transition. I started making this transition back in 2015. And I was working at a full scope ad marketing and public relations agency where we had those, big clients. And I initially, actually, the transition was not planning. I was not planning to do anything related to business. Even to the point, like, I didn't even fully realize that I was going to do the business things for myself, as I think so many of us founders, right? We start out to be a health coach. That was my beat. I was a health coach, meditation and yoga teacher. So sort of a holistic health coaching angle is where I first started. And I knew that, like, yes, I'm going to have to sell. I knew that, yes, I'll have to have a website. I knew I'm going to have to put out content or do marketing in some way. But so many of us, right, we start out these businesses because we want to be copywriters. We want to be coaches. We want to be sharing the wisdom we've learned around hormone health, like whatever it might be. We start these because we have some personal ambition around, I don't want to work for my boss. For me, a huge part was I had to fight tooth and nail for being able to go to therapy on a Monday afternoon. Genuinely, like, I had to fight to leave a half hour early to go to therapy on a weekly basis. And genuinely, I'm like, that is insane. This is inhumane. Yeah. And I honestly, I was raised by parents. I said when I was quite young to my parents that they had ruined me for the workforce because they worked. My dad was a professor, a fairly traditional job, but in terms of a lot of things around agency and time flexibility, and my mom works for herself, they kind of quickly ruined me from a young age around what's normal. And so from the get, a lot of typical office job policies, corporate policies, I found to be, I know it sounds a little bit insane to say it this extreme, but I found them to be inhumane. And I still do find them to be kind of inhumane. 2 weeks of vacation is inhumane. That's not correct. It's not correct. So that was a lot of my impetus for making that transition, was genuinely, I'd risen through the ranks of the agency quite quickly. They put me on working on a Super Bowl campaign for apartments.com. One of my like brags that I still am like, yeah, I guess that was pretty cool. I was 24 and I worked on a Super Bowl campaign. But in that moment, I realized, like, I'm 24 and this is probably like, this is a peak moment. And I was working directly with the vice president and the president. And I was like, I don't want their jobs. They're not leaving. They're fairly young. They're like late 30s. So they're not leaving anytime. What is this life? I don't want this. And between that and the fact that I ended every day genuinely like kind of drained. And I just wanted to like go to happy hour and then go home and like rot with Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And I'd always kind of known this job was going to be temporary because I knew that doing sales for, giant companies that don't have a whole ton of heart was never really going to work for me. A ton of my background is in nonprofit. I went to school for journalism. Like, I'm a journalist at my core. Doing sales and PR work felt dirty to me for quite a few years. There was a lot of shame. And my journalist friends from college definitely perpetuated that like shame around it. But yeah, I knew I wanted to make a transition into something that felt meaningful to me. My definition of meaningful and finding meaningful work has evolved a lot over the years. But that I think was I wanted to find something that personally gave me agency and gave me a lot more agency over my time and my income. And I was absolutely seduced by the boss babes of the 2015 eras of like, absolutely seduced. I will fully own it. Of like, I just had a launch that made, at the time, one of my first coaches made $20,000 from a course. And that I was like, I could pay off such a big chunk of my student loans. Like, what could that even? Oh my God. It blew my mind and I was so seduced by it. So personally, like time agency and money agency were big parts of the reason I took the leap. And then I did just want to feel I was doing something meaningful. I wanted to feel I was doing something that I could tell people what I did and feel proud, which is ironic because, dear God, it has taken me so long to actually feel proud and feel like what I do is legitimate. Like when I meet with family to be like, I run this online business, and it still gets me. I'm 9 years in and it still gets me sometimes that I'm like, this is real. I do run a company. But that's taken time. It's taken time and I still ebb and flow on it. So
yeah,
there's a little bit of my origin story.
Thanks for sharing that. I was literally having dinner last night with some friends and they were like, how's your business going? I saw your ad. I'm like, I don't run ads, but okay. But I was like, oh God, like I feel seen. They're asking me this question. And it's been like 7-ish years I've had my own business. So yeah, I totally understand like that. Still, sometimes it catches you off guard, like, oh, this isn't just like this happy dream that is like happening behind the scenes. It's actually real life. That's amazing. Awesome. So I feel like one thing that you mentioned is that you had this background in traditional marketing and sales where you're working with these huge companies, right? And I'm going to guess that you didn't have that much agency of like who you got to work with, right? Because they're just projects assigned. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So the agency I worked with predominantly worked with hospitality brands. So for the most part, like the Cayman Islands, Grand Cayman was a client. Aruba was a client, like the Aruba Board of Tourism, a bunch of Hard Rock hotels, like a bunch of hotels and brands like that, right? And so when I first got hired, I got assigned to a handful of those hospitality accounts. And that was definitely, at first it was challenging because I didn't really know what I was doing. I had a background in journalism. I knew the other sort of side of it. I didn't know this. I was like, who do I interview? Eventually I realized actually it's the same skills. You just apply them in a different way. But quickly that became quite soul sucking. They then though did realize, I feel like, the Devil Wears Prada scene, the movie scene where Meryl Streep, Miranda Priestley is saying like, talking about like, I had hope, I live on it. Go ahead, hire the smart fat girl. I feel like I was that hire for the company because they had this burgeoning consumer product packaged goods, CPG side of things where Cooper Tires was another account of mine. I've had a tire account. I'm like, if you can sell tires, y'all, you can sell anything. But pens and tires and Party City is a little easier to sell, and Firehouse Subs, a tax accounting software, Tax Slayer, court service departments, like they realized, oh, let's take the smart fat girl and put her, I wasn't fat at the time, but not really relevant, but like I was this like the weird one, definitely, who wasn't donned in like bright pink and Lily Pulitzer and like had a nose ring that they made me take out for company meetings, like for client meetings, right? Like I was the like weird hire, the weird smart hire. And so they put me on these other accounts quite quickly when they realized, oh, wait, we might actually have a use for the weird one. Let's put her over here.
Yeah.
So there was a degree of like, I did like it because it was more challenging than figuring out, how do I sell a Valentine's Day package for this luxury private island?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but on the other hand, I didn't get to go on any of the trips to hang out with the clients on the luxury private island. I went to, Findlay, Ohio for Cooper Tire meetings.
Yeah, the reason why I brought it up is because now you're doing marketing and it's for businesses that you really enjoy marketing, and there's a level of impact, right? Like people start their business because they have a passion for this. And I think a huge problem still, even though I feel like the industry has talked about this for years and years and years, the huge problem is that so many people feel like they're being sleazy anytime they market themselves and sell their offers. And like, if I was marketing for maybe Amazon, I maybe would feel a little bit sleazy, right? Because I don't support that company. But when you're supporting your own mission, there's a different approach, right? And I'm sure you've seen this in your own, like, you're not ending the day feeling burnt out and just wanting to drink and then numb out with Netflix. You're like, actually, like, I get off calls and I feel really lit up. You probably do too, right? Yeah. I just it's interesting because most people don't have that background in marketing, right? Like I have a degree in business marketing too. I did some marketing for a couple of like nonprofit companies and stuff, and that led into what I do now, because I was like, why aren't you guys listening to me?
Relatable.
And it's terrible, and I know what to do instead. So like that was so soul sucking for me. So when I actually had that like liberty to do whatever the hell I wanted, and test out fun trends and different like weird things that go against the grain, it's different. Like it totally is a whole different feeling. And I like some of my passion is helping people realize that, right? Like it can be fun. It doesn't have to feel like you're selling a used car. It doesn't have to feel like you're shoving things down people's throats. It actually can flow and be really organic and as fun. I know people say this all the time, but as easy as like telling your friend about a new restaurant in town. It really gets to be that easy. Anything you want to add to that?
I think I have this conversation all the time with folks, and I want to be so clear that it's not like the fact that I came from this background where, I was selling tires and figuring out how to sell pens and sell at like mass scale, y'all. We're talking like selling at a massive scale where we are tapping into like consumer psychology to manipulate, to drive sales. Like it is I have done the things that a lot of us as small founders are afraid of doing, of like, oh, am I going to manipulate someone and like take their money and be gross and bad and wrong and evil? Like I have played that game. And so when I started marketing my own stuff, I absolutely felt weird and squirrely about it, and I've been at this for a long time now. I've had a lot of internal reckonings with what is my relationship to sales. And I still, it's kind of baffles me that I genuinely love sales. And I really actually think sales deep down can be about love. I absolutely believe sales can be about love. But I believe that to my core. And so that is what that's where I root the conversation when I'm talking to clients or people I meet online or whoever it might be. I think that so much of what causes the internal friction is not actually about sales. it is about two things. It is about, one, our own internal relationship with capitalism and money at large, right? And so because we are all capitalism is an inherently exploitative system.
Yeah.
It is. That is true. So yes, participating in capitalism, it makes sense that you feel gross about it because it is objectively a flawed system. That makes sense. And you can't opt out.
Yeah.
Like, we can't. There's not, even if you were independently wealthy, I mean, it's not even a practical, like, it's not even a useful thought exercise because we can't opt out. And so one thing I think people need to do is have your own internal reckoning with, like, okay, I can't opt out of this. Okay, I hate it. There are parts I don't like. And come to the place of, I'm going to participate in a way that seeks to continually explore, where am I causing harm, or where am I accidentally causing harm, and seek to minimize harm. That's like, that's it. That's all we can do. And the other piece is asking for what you want. Pretty much asking is physically uncomfortable for so many people. And I think mostly what I see is that there's the deep-seated fear of rejection that is biological, not just like, I do not like, yes, you might have had your unique version of like trauma in childhood, big T or little t trauma that feels like, but we've all had experiences of rejection, and the experience of rejection is biologically something that our nervous systems try to get us to not experience. And when you sell, you will be rejected. When you market, you will be rejected. Those are guaranteed outcomes. But I see this with, like, my first ever coaching experiences was unintentionally coaching people in my corporate office around negotiating for raises or negotiating for more vacation or whatever it might be. And so I see the same resistance to asking when it comes to asking for money. It's so often what my clients say. I'm like, you're not asking. I mean, like, yeah, technically, but you're not being like, hey, can you give me money? Yeah. I have this conversation with my husband too around, like, he has such an aversion to GoFundMes. He's a chef and wants to start his own restaurant. And he has such this aversion to asking for money from like a GoFundMe campaign. So this shows up everywhere, y'all. It is not just sales. I would assert, I think most of us feel sleazy asking for things. End of sentence. Sales is just one iteration where we do it where we have to do it more frequently to get the result that we want. And so we feel like selling is sleazy, but really you're just afraid of asking.
Yeah, that's so true. So powerful. My husband and I just got married a month ago, and that's like a huge initiation for opening yourself up to receive gifts, because so especially like I've done a lot of healing around this, but my partner hasn't. And people are just, you get a lot of cash gifts. And he was like, oh my God, we have to have the best party ever. I'm like, no, they're doing this because they love us and they like are excited to be there. But the whole time he was like, we have to do more. We have to get more catering. We have to get like more to like make us worthy of getting these gifts. And I was like, this is such an interesting lesson we're learning together. But yeah, like there's so many instances of like, you have a headache or something and you like can't communicate that you want someone just to like give you water and ibuprofen and like tuck you into bed. Like you try to give them subtle signs, right? And when it's so much easier just to be like, hey, can you do this for me? But it's the same as selling, right? Like you have this thing that you're super passionate about and you want to share it with people and you're inviting them in, but it feels scary. It feels like there's rejection coming up. Speaking of rejection, something that really drew me to your form that you submitted to me is you told me about this client experience that really shook your confidence and kind of sent you into a total business reset. So I would love to talk about that because I feel like most people don't share this openly because, maybe it could be an embarrassing moment or something, but this podcast is called Filthy Rich with Story for a reason. These stories are often the most powerful.
Yeah.
And really, I feel like shape you as a entrepreneur, and it gets people to actually like see your values and your vision and where you stand. So you want to just give the listeners a little overview?
You have to remind me
Oh,
which story I ended up giving you.
it was the
there,
story
there are a
about
couple of, give me bullet points and I can
the
go.
client who like asked you, I'm pulling up your form right now,
Okay.
asked you about a question or something, and then they had a chargeback.
Okay. That's the one I thought okay. Yes.
Okay.
I thought that's the one I thought. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. It's so wild. Our nervous systems are so fascinating, y'all. I could probably still get myself triggered about this. If I like worked my way into it. So
Yeah.
this was, I'm pretty sure it was 2020. Yeah, I think it was like Q3, Q4 2020. And I had a client who was in a challenge group program that I was running. And they sent me a DM on Instagram asking about a question about their payment plan, when it was going to bill again or something like that. And at that time, I was in a season I was relatively new to having an OBM managing my inbox. And I was trying to have healthier boundaries because my business was growing and in a scaling phase where I couldn't, like, I needed things to be cleaner.
Mhm.
Because I was starting to tiptoe toward burnout and I was feeling quite wobbly. And so I practiced my moment of boundary setting. And instead of pausing on a random Monday afternoon when I saw this message and going and opening the software, because I was actually out, and instead of pausing and going and finding the answer to the question, I said, oh, hey, email support@chelseaquint.com and my team will take care of you and answer that.
Mhm.
And
Totally
I
reasonable.
to be clear, though, I felt like I was going to die. I remember my heart racing. It was in my throat. I felt so afraid. And that client replied relatively quickly and said something like, oh, just for a question about my payment plan, question mark, with a bunch of question marks. And I was like, oh, okay, we're testing this. We're having boundaries. This is safe. This is safe for my body. And so I wrote back and said, yep, DMs just get a little crazy. So that's the best place to answer it or something like that.
Yeah.
They didn't say anything. I trusted that it was okay. The OBM who was in my inbox, like, knows how to handle everything. So I was like, okay, I did it. I'm safe. I'm good. I don't need to. And I also was like, I don't need to micromanage this now. I don't need to go message the OBM and make sure. I was like, I am okay. This is safe. I did it. Yay. A week or so later, I get a notice from my OBM that we have a chargeback from that client for their next payment that processed. And I'm like, what the heck? So I immediately say, hey, I'm immediately like, oh, did my OBM screw up? Was there a mistake? What happened? And they were like, they never emailed me. So I go and I look at our DMs and I'm like, no, I didn't have anything. I see now that they've unfollowed me.
Oh boy.
And then I see that they've removed themselves from the program that they 4 days ago had been gushing about how they're getting these results and this is happening and they love it. They did a 180 on me. And it shook me. I also lost or actually, no, I don't think I fought that one. But I did. So I just refunded them, didn't fight it, canceled out the rest of their payment plan, and then removed them from access from the rest of my programs. Now, note for anyone who has ever sold lifetime access offers, my mistake was not emailing the client. What I needed to do was email the client and say, hey, this is in our terms of service because you did a chargeback. We are removing you from all programs. And I needed to communicate that clearly or have my OBM do it. I did not because I was avoidant. And I was like, I don't want you to ever talk to me again. Please just like, I hate this so much. Please make it go away. So then about 6 months later, the client sends a very long, very intense email about partially about what a bad person I am for removing their access to this program they'd completed a year and a half, 2 years ago, and how I needed to give it back to them immediately. And da, 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 da. I'm like, so you want to go back to this program? You hate me, but you want to, what is happening? Why, like,
Yeah.
why do you not think I'm a nice person? Why is this? Like, it's so in my head about who I was as a person. Like, it was so enmeshed in my identity, this experience, for me. I don't know that that's what this person was meaning to do, like, but I took it so personally. And gave them immediate access to everything via Dropbox. Like, they actually had the files. I gave them all the files. They said that was insufficient because now they didn't know if I would just take away the access. I was like, you can download
They didn't even pay for the whole thing.
What? No, I canceled out that payment plan. This was a different program they had taken 2 years ago.
Oh.
And completed. This was a different program. They had worked with me over the course of years. So I was like, you kind of know me, I thought. Nah, this was a program they'd lost access to because of the way they'd handled things. Gotcha. And they wanted to come back, apparently, and access it. I gave it to them. They said, no, this isn't sufficient. You need to, I can't remember what they asked. They asked for like a line. They asked for a lot, a lot of labor on my part after already putting it into a Dropbox. And then they did another chargeback. I fought that one. I lost. And that, I share that second part of the story particularly because of how destabilizing it was for me to realize. Ultimately, it was $500. Like, it wasn't a huge, but at certain points of my business, actually $500 could have made or broken me.
Yeah.
I was very lucky that then that was not the case. But I share that because for me, it was so destabilizing to, one, have this experience of someone who had worked with me, had gotten results from working with me, had taken multiple programs from me, had known me through my business for a couple of years, came at me, and I took it so personally. And then to realize I could lose a chargeback from something I delivered fully years ago. That was terrifying.
Yeah, that's really scary.
Yeah. And so I pretty much went dark and decided it wasn't intentional, but I was so scared that I basically was like, I am not marketing myself. I am only doing referrals. And that was pretty true for a few years. I had a season of, I actually turned my entire business into a sliding scale model so that I could like martyr myself and prove how good of a person I was. I had a season of very judgmentally being in the ethical marketing world and talking about how all marketing everywhere else is pretty evil. And I'm being a little bit melodramatic, but I was so afraid. And that honestly, 2025 is really the first year I've been back publicly marketing, publicly like moving into a visibility era again, because it really took me that long to feel safe again and to be able to decouple the personal and knowing myself well enough to be like, you know what? Someone can get mad at me and I can still be okay. I can still be safe. Someone can say I'm a bad person. Someone can say like, and I have my refund. I have my account set up that has my refund. I have a separate account set up so that like I am protected. I save in case of.
Gotcha. Smart.
Refunds and what have you. So yeah, but it took me, that one shook me, y'all.
Yeah. Well, it's something I think every single business owner at some point fears, right? Like a client turning on them. And in part, that's kind of feeding into why they aren't selling their offers, because they have this fear of, well, what if I sell to somebody and then they are disappointed with me or they don't get results and then they turn on me and tell everyone that I'm a fraud or like make this big stink about like try to like destroy my business. And that actually happened to you, but you're still sitting here across the screen from me. You are still working with clients. You're going back into the visibility. So what would, like, knowing that you went through this, right? You're obviously stronger now, but you talked about having the refund fund set aside. But what other precautions are you taking, maybe in your marketing, but also just in the back end of stuff, so that if this were to happen again, you are better prepared for it?
You know, I'm like, do I actually have any precautions? I'm not sure I have any precautions other than the sort of financial planning of, you know, oh, okay, now I do know this can happen. So yes, in case you didn't know, we as business owners very rarely win chargebacks. It is unfortunate. But if you think about it, it also makes sense. What, you know, Chase or whoever wants to keep their customer. And so we are not their customer. Even if we are their customer, we are not their customer in that instance. So I do think, you know, don't be paranoid about it, but because I was for a while, but having that, you know, sort of financial safety net of, I do have this fund that is for making sure that like things are solid if a chargeback happens. Because especially as small founders, like it could be very destabilizing. And if you're ever considering doing a chargeback, like, don't be a dick. Yeah. Be, you know, if you're doing that to a small business owner, you know, certainly plenty of people there are plenty of bamboozlers and snake oil salespeople out there in the online business world. And you know, do it mindfully if you choose to do it. I don't think I would ever do it to a small business owner, no matter the circumstances. But then I think the other thing, well, I did mention that, like, if ever, I have not had this circumstance again. But if ever I did, I'd be very clear about communicating everything and putting everything in writing around my terms of service. I did have terms of service back then. So, you know, I already had my terms of service. I already had my terms and conditions at checkout. I had everything in the right place. But I think for me, the biggest thing, it's not as much about precautions. It's been about getting myself to a point where I know, like I said, that if someone genuinely, and this is like internal conversations, like self-coaching moments I have with myself and nervous system practices I do, I genuinely for years now have been practicing imagining the situation of, people hate me online. Someone gave me a negative comment. Hundreds of people are looking at me and there are a bunch of negative comments, whatever. I've been doing that and practicing that for years so that I now, it's not like I don't feel afraid. Like there is still, fear still comes up if there's like a big visibility moment. I still feel squirrely inside if I get a comment from someone even disagreeing with me. If I put out like a relatively hot take and someone disagrees with me, or they point out a moment of nuance I missed, my heart rate pops up. I feel a little afraid. I still feel scared, but I know that I can still like myself. I know that I can get myself back down to a point of neutral so that I can respond. And I know that I can stay safe inside of people getting mad at me. I know that I can stay safe if someone wants to cancel me. Like, I know that I can handle it. One, because I had this singular experience, but two, because I have been practicing the thoughts of it. And I have been exploring my relationship with, like, what am I deeply afraid of in this time when I went dark? Like, that is a lot of what I did. So it's less about precautions and more about the inner work that so many of us didn't bargain for when we started our businesses.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you leaned into it. And like, I've had a couple of experiences, like, nothing on that scale, but, you know, I had my TikTok get hacked and stolen, and that was like my primary lead generation, and that like really shook me. It was also when TikTok was getting banned, so I was like, what the hell am I going to do now, right?
Yeah.
I'm still here. I'm alive. I was very stressed for a while, but I'm still here. Like, I've had clients default on payments and not pay me and
Mhm.
like, ghost me. Like these things just happen. And I think, yes, we can do that in our work, right? Of like preparing for these things and kind of like role playing, well, what will I do if this happens? But I think it can come into our marketing in a really being ethical with our marketing, because a
Mm.
lot of people, I feel like these fears come from, well, at least with my clients that I work with, they have this fear of like not being able to deliver. And then when we
Mm.
actually peel back the layers, I will often find some things in their marketing or their offer that's not entirely embodied. So when we go
Mm.
back to their offer, maybe they have like a line, just like one line that they borrowed from somebody else they saw online that's, sharing. And I'm like, okay, well, do you have a story that backs this up? Because my whole curriculum is like, what's the story that we're using to back up your messaging, to back up this offer, to back up whatever. And so having these stories that can back up, like, okay, now in module 1, I teach this, you're going to get this result. Here's how I know it. Module, etc. That helps you so much. So if you get into a situation of, okay, what if a client doesn't succeed? You can go, well, did I deliver on all these 4 points of my thing? Does it match on my sales page? What did the client do or not do? Right? Like I've had so many clients who hire me, and I've cleaned this up in my messaging because I'm like, okay, it's a me problem. Calling these wrong people. But I've had people hire me, do literally no work. Like we'll get on a call, they'll ask the same question over and over and over again. I'm like, okay, well, did you do what we talked about a month ago? No. Okay, so I know that's not me. Like I served them as best as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And there would be a time where I would take that. I mean, I still feel for them. Like I want them to be successful, but there'd be a time where I would feel like this sense of responsibility to make sure that they get a result and go above, outside my boundaries, right? Go above and beyond what I promised them in this offer because I want them to be successful. But when you have these stories that back up your messaging, back up your offer, it's so easy to keep those boundaries because you're like, nope, this is exactly what you got. This is exactly what I said. I was transparent the whole time. And I know ethical marketing is a huge thing you talk about too. So I would love for you to weigh in on that. If you have any like experience with that as well, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I do. And it's funny, if you'd asked me the question of like, what have I done precaution wise a few years ago, it would have been a completely different answer, because back then, so much of it was like the initial wave of precautions was be so ethical in my marketing. And back then I actually did start a like phrase I use constantly in my marketing is I'll have these little asides where I literally write transparent marketing moment, : and I'll literally just write out, like I break the fourth wall and I write out whatever it is, around if I'm limiting spots, why am I limiting spots? If I set up an early bird price, why am I setting up the early bird price? And it's I honestly started doing it from a bit of a place of fear, but now it's actually kind of, I just love it. And I love the sort of like, I'm half teaching you the strategy of behind the scenes of why I'm doing this thing and also being very transparent. Yeah. And I do think that transparency moment is a huge part of how to be ethical inside of your marketing. I think also that, as founders, one of our core jobs is to continue, as I see it, like being the CEO of a company, your core job is to like make sure the product, whatever you're delivering, is solid and continue to do that. It requires iteration. It requires continued looking at what am I delivering and how am I iterating? What is customer satisfaction looking like? Are we getting results continued? It's that and growing the company, which means selling. Like those are the two primary jobs. And so sell with transparency. And like I said earlier, sales is really about love. And I think this ties into like when someone is feeling squirrely about their offer, I will typically dig into, or about selling their offer really, right? I'll dig into like, what do you not believe in this? It's a different pathway to your same thing of what story can you back up, right? And what do you not believe in? Like, because if you genuinely believe in your ability to get results, your commitment to get results, your framework, your process. Like, I have no concern. Sometimes I get bored of my offers. Sometimes I get bored of myself. Sometimes I'm like, I've talked about the same thing for 40 days in a row. And it's like, yeah, I'm looking for a new dopamine hit. I want to put out a new offer. Surprise, surprise. But I have no squirm around someone hiring me for my messaging sprint offer or my one-on-one offer. Or my copy audits. I have no squirm about any of those, because I am so confident in the ROI that will come back. Like, it is just, there is no question in my body anywhere, because I know that I have done the work to make sure these are incredibly good offers, and I love them. Like, that, because of that, I have built this around something that I love. And so I think that when you are really certain of and in love with your offers, and you are committed to continuing to like iterate and look at, if someone isn't getting results, okay, let me get curious. Let me not get triggered. Let me see, are they showing up? Where could I pivot something? Can I learn something from this? Can I show up in a way that honors my boundaries and isn't the like, stressful, reactive, I have to get them results, otherwise I'm bad. I think you're pretty much guaranteed, like, if you love your offer, you believe in your offer, and you are honest about what the offer does and doesn't do, about the results that it has typically gotten, then like, there's really not anything to be afraid of. And fear might still come up because it is natural with fear of rejection. Like,
Yeah.
but there's not anything to be afraid of.
Yeah. I think that is a wonderful message to end this episode on. This was such an impactful, I love this conversation. I feel like we could keep talking for another hour or so. But it truly comes down to what you just said. Like, if you love your offer, if you love your work, and you know in your soul that you are well-intentioned, then sales really should flow for you. It should feel like an extension of your work. It shouldn't feel like this thing you're forcing on people. Invitation to come on in and learn more. And I feel like it's so, like, I love my work so much. I'm sure you love your work so much, of like helping people realize that and giving them the tools to actually fall in love with their offer, make sure it's strong, make sure, they are being ethical and marketing with empathy, instead of just saying the same flashy things that so many people are saying right now, right? And I've been hearing it so much of everyone's marketing looks the same. And if you want to stand out, and if you want to become known for your work, this is your invitation. This is your like little push me moment of like, okay, so dare to be different, dare to say something differently, dare to show up and call people out within reason, right? Of like, you have a story of this experience, and now you're going to say like, this is why I don't do this in my offer. Yeah, just like be daring to be that leader and not have to make sure you're like in alignment with what everyone else is posting and everything. That is how I truly think people are going to take off in 2026, is like just daring to be different and daring to love their offer so much that it doesn't matter so-and-so is saying that this industry's dying or Instagram's dead, whatever, like all the negative stuff that literally happens every single year. I feel like a platform dies, and then like something new comes
and an offer style dies, and a way of like, webinars are dead, Instagram's dead, reels are dead, group programs are dead. Right. Yeah. I'm like, we've been around a long time, Hannah and I, like, guys, they're not dead. They're not dead.
Yeah.
They're not dead. And hey, if that's how you're differentiating yourself, okay, I'll listen. I might listen. I want the tea. I'm curious about your insights. Like, if you've got some thought leadership around it and you've got a solution, okay, maybe tell me that. I'd be maybe a little curious about, like, could you share your thought leadership without putting down something else to say, like, memberships are dead, live group programs are back. Like, we can differentiate without that put down, but nothing is dead.
For sure. And that's just entrepreneurship. Like if you're not
Yeah.
adapting every single week, then I don't know what you're doing. You're probably
Mhm.
getting left behind because of everyone else is being like, okay, great, the algorithm changed. Let me test this new thing out. That's marketing, right? Like we're testing
Yeah.
constantly.
Yes.
And if you're just like showing up and saying, what should I post today? And then posting it, like that's not going to get you ahead. Whew. Anyways, is there any last minute things you want to bring up? Definitely feel free to plug like where people can find you, connect with you. If you have like a freebie you want to drop, let me know. But this is, yeah, tell us what.
Sure. So I'm like anything last minute things that I want to drop. It's just the last thing I want to say is make it your life's mission. I really think that end of year, beginning of year is such a lovely time to do this because it's a little more introspective, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're in Oz, I don't know if do you have listeners who are in Oz?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you're in Oz, then, pretend it's cozy as it's summertime. Or maybe you're like on a camping trip. I don't know. But make it your mission to fall in love with your offer and fall in love with the potential that is available for your people on the other side of that offer. Because when you do that, you're naturally, and this can be like a weekly journaling practice, a weekly meditation if that's your jam, a weekly more strategic like whiteboarding session where you say, what do I love about this offer? And that is going to help you regularly like unlock the stories, unlock the features you want to talk about, unlock new layers and angles of thought leadership so you don't get bored and your audience doesn't get bored of you talking about the same thing, and fall in love with the potential that's available for your people. Because again, this is going to give you those rich stories to share on an ongoing basis that frankly makes selling easy because you're like, that's the crux of my sales strategy. I go a lot deeper into it, blah, blah, blah. There's more strategy, but the crux is about falling in love with something and becoming so enamored with it and so enamored with the idea of what's possible for people. And that's what sparks the way that I sell, which is why like people genuinely email me saying, I love the way that you sell. I love your sales emails. Like that's people like when I sell to them.
Yeah.
That's wild. But it's true. So play with that and then come hang out with me on the interwebs. I'm at chelsea.quint on Instagram and Threads. My website is business-whisperer.com. And I've got great stuff. The greatest stuff goes out to my email list. So business-whisperer.com/newsletter to get on my email list. And that's the goodness. Yeah. Come hang out.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. This was honestly such a good conversation. I loved it. I loved your honesty. I loved just seeing the side of your brain of how you navigated such a hard situation. I think so many people dread, but here you are, you're glowing, and it sounds like everyone is loving the evolution that it kind of brought you through. So thank you so much for being here, taking your time to talk to us on the Filthy Rich Wood Story podcast. Yeah. Go follow her, go connect. And again, thank you so much.